On this edition of Music Day, a verified hit, we'll discover what's the bleep all about. Speaking up and out on injustice, lyrical content, and artistic freedom. With our special guest, Mtume, Geo Bivins, YoYo, and Torrez.
We're going to tell you stuff people won't tell you. Real talk with experience.
We talking business up in here.
We're going to give the people what they want.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome to Music Day, a verified hit. I'm your host, Billy Johnson Jr. Today's topic is hot. What's the bleep all about? Speaking up and out on injustice, lyrical content, and artistic freedom. We have an incredible panel today. First up, the legendary Mtume, the West Coast queen of rap, YoYo, RCA Records Senior VP, GM of Promotions, Geo Bivins, and all the way from New York, Hot 97's music director and radio personality, Ms. Torrez. What's up, y'all?
Yo. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Very honored to be here with all you guys today. We have some great topics. A lot of things have been happening in the music business, and you guys are the perfect panel to get into this. But one thing that's impacting all of us right now is COVID-19. I definitely think for the music business, it definitely has had a real, impact on us, as it has the whole world. But I know for me, when I found out that South by Southwest was canceled, when I got that news, that made me really nervous. And so I would like to find out, from you, how did you guys react? How did you think you were going to be impacted by this? And then we'll find out what happened. But Mtume, let's start with you. When COVID was coming down, quarantine and all these things, as a musician, I know you've retired, from doing as much as you were doing in the past, but what was your initial thoughts in terms of what this meant for you and the music business?
Well, first and foremost, for me personally, it was very, very taxing because, I had lost my father and we were having a huge memorial for him at Lincoln Center, but it came on March 12th. So we had to cancel it. I also lost several friends, due to COVID. So it wasn't a headline for me. It was like a personal, touching moment. We had Wallace Rooney, the great trumpet player. I knew Wynton's father, Marcellus. And, that's how it struck me. I'm, like I said, I'm the old head here and I'm exhibit A, that was my age group. So I lost about 5 people that I knew, and was close to. Yeah, so that was the urgency that it touched in me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Definitely sorry for your losses. And what's interesting about what you said, and I don't have the stats on this, but when you look at how people are reacting, who wears masks, who doesn't wear masks, I kind of wonder what side of the fence people on. If they were personally impacted on it, does that have an impact on whether or not they believe that they should wear masks, et cetera? How does that affect you?
Well, that's like, should you wear a condom? That's just like kind of conversation. We just happen to be under the quote unquote stewardship of an idiot. That's one of the problems. We have such double messaging. On one side, you have science telling you wear that mask. Then you have an idiot saying don't wear it. And as a result, we have not in this country been able to get a hold on it, right? Because it keeps resurging. Because everybody's not wearing a mask. Look what's happening in China, and South Korea. They're partying now because the cases, new cases are so low. Ours is exploding. I mean, right. You're talking about 170 people, man, dead. That's not just the ones suffering. I mean, dead. And we're still walking around talking about, I don't want to wear a mask because it impedes on my freedom.
Right. Okay, I know that was a little.
It's about you protecting the people that come around you.
Okay, I know that's a little off of the music topic, but I mean, I thought I had to ask.
It's about rhythm, baby.
I had to ask you. I had to ask you. And so what about artistically and musically? How would you say you were impacted?
Well, I've been retired, for quite a while. I mean, the only project that I'm currently working on is we're doing a project on our lead singer, a former lead singer, Tuatha Agee, whose voice is still spectacular. And so I'm mixing it with young producers And like I said, it's always important to know what you don't do. There's a new sound. Each generation brings a sound, but I still know how to produce vocals. And like I said, I put the cherry on the top.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a mixture of the old and new.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes when you have all old people with no youth, your glass is half empty.
Yes.
Okay. When you have all new people with no old people, your glass is half full. Right now, we got half a glass of music.
I love it. Love it.
Come together to all the generations come together.
Okay.
You know stuff I don't know. I know stuff you don't know. Together, we know it all.
Yes, that's so dope. YoYo, I see you shaking your head. How were you? I've been watching you on Instagram. You have a very popular Instagram, and I know you have something going on Wednesdays that you started since COVID. But before that, like, you tour a lot, right? I know you tour a lot. And so what was your first thought when you saw how COVID was impacting your career?
I mean, in the beginning, I was just thinking, okay, the world is shut down before, for a day. I was just prepared for a week or 2 weeks. I was just like, wow, I get a chance to slow down and rest a little bit. It wasn't until the second month that I just started getting anxiety, automatically. I just started thinking, okay, damn, what's next? Finally, this is my second go round in music. Of course, I've been, celebrating 30 years in hip hop. So for me to just, be back out there and finally getting my feet wet back into this new industry, as he spoke about, and being able to influence some of these younger artists, I was scared. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do because, being in the music my entire life and having side gigs and other things that I'm doing, but music just being really my foundation. I had high anxiety.
Right. And so how long ago is it that you launched this? Tell us about this thing you do on Wednesdays. Is definitely fitting for this conversation because I think it was in response to COVID and you're giving young emerging artists an opportunity to be seen and heard. Yeah. Tell us about that and how that's been going.
I mean, for me to quickly jump into something, just thinking, I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of DMs and people asking me, to check them out, watch their YouTube. So I created a platform on West Coast Wednesdays where artists from everywhere could use my platform and showcase their talent. And it's been very successful. And we give them the good, bad, and the industry. And and so far so good. We've had poets, we've had legends come on and comment and give their, and sing, so it's been exciting.
And so here's something that, everyone can talk about, but in terms of some of the things that have emerged in COVID, and one of the things like D-Nice's, quarantine parties have been incredible there, and the verses, emerged out of that. And some of these things are just so dope. It's like, it's great that the creativity was triggered and these things that I expect to stay around. Like, I don't think they're just, something to do in the meantime, but do you feel that way with West Coast Wednesdays that you're going to continue that?
For a while, it was everything was Zoom. It was performing on Zoom. For me, it was really getting into this new media world where I had to get me a Zoom light. I had to, figure out, my prep time and figure, get me a wall that I could sit in front of. It was really preparing me for this new generation of things to come anyway. I mean, I was never tech savvy. So yeah, I think I will continue it. But in the beginning I was like, oh, it's way too much. This commitment is just way too much in the middle of not knowing what's going on and having this anxiety in my belly. I was just like, oh God, help me. Like, but I mean, some days, some people have got the worst of me. I mean, I told one artist one time, listen, are you focused? I don't see any music on your page. My daughter said, Mom, please don't go on there giving people critique and you're frustrated.
Hey, that's what Auntie YoYo does. So, that's awesome. And then let's talk about, from the executive side. So Geo, it seemed like you're doing okay working from home. How how has this whole COVID shift been for you?
I think is for what I do. I'm in promotion, and I think for a lot of people in the music business, it showed us that we really don't need all the big fixtures, the office, the boardroom. we can still accomplish everything, you know, on Zoom and apart because we all have separate functions. The music has never stopped. So, you know, we're putting out like more music, I think, now than we were before, because now artists are, that's all they have to do is make records. And so we get a lot.
Hey,
But
let's put that in context. Sorry to interrupt you. So we always hear that artists, like, trying to get them to deliver the music on time, you know, could be a problem. So has that improved since COVID?
slightly, but yeah, it's much better because again, they're stuck in the studio, and once they got their creative process together and found their group, then it's been nonstop.
Yeah, and so so even though for what you do, it hasn't had that much of a impact on how you function day to day, but have you been inspired? Has it, you know, any of this inspired you in any way in terms of how you do your work?
I think the parts that I do miss is going out to radio and seeing like TT and actually doing the in-person thing, like pitching your records and bringing the artists in to meet them in person. Because there's nothing like that when you take the radio person to dinner with the programmer and then they strike a real personal connection or something like that. You can't replace that on Zoom. But
Yeah.
we have learned that, look, we're working with what we have. And it's actually working. You can get to know somebody on Zoom, but again, it's not like being in person. But
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we've just had to adjust to. I mean, all of our radio discussions are just on the computer now.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to an artist about that, an emerging artist, very talented. And yeah, he didn't like that. You know, he's like, I don't like the Zoom meetings, you know, in person, it will be a different story. So yeah, I think that is so is there, how have you guys dealt with that? Like, how have you made it, you know, how have you made it more comfortable for the artist to, because that's a very important part, you know, like,
Well, we
yeah.
had a new artist last week. Her name is Leela IK. She has a song called I Spy that we're working at radio, and she's a reggae artist. So what we did with her was we set up a Zoom party. We had about 75 programmers, but we sent them all Jamaican food. So they would
Oh,
figure out their local restaurant that served Jamaican food, and then we used DoorDash to send the food to them. Those who didn't want to do it that way, we had a company send them patties and cocoa bread. So,
wow. Wow.
I mean, we try to create some kind of an environment to make the artists comfortable, and you know, everybody had their Jamaican food, so it was like a big party. We played videos, so
Yeah,
you
that's a brilliant idea. So like all these Zoom parties I get invited to, I want some birthday cake. So I want
know.
people to send me, or I'm gonna have to bring my own cake or something, you know, because it's just it's not the same.
Well, we started serving lunch when some of our music meetings. I mean, we just coordinated, the lunch is there. They can eat while they're on the camera or eat, you know, but it's almost, that's the closest we're going to get
Yeah.
probably for quite some time.
Yeah, I like it. And TT, hey TT. So you're in radio. So radio has just been so important throughout this transition because like you guys have essential workers, you know, you guys have continued to do it. And so, but when it first hit, were you a little nervous or like what's going to happen or?
To be honest with you, it was a second thought for me. It was not on the forefront. Being in New York City, obviously we got hit drastically with, you know, many people who passed away, and the virus did run rampant here. But at the beginning, when it was all happening, it was so secondary. I wasn't paying as much attention to it. We were like in summer jam planning mode. We were about to announce. We were in execution mode. We were working on contracts. We were having our big board meetings, our vision meetings. So we were like knee deep into like heavy work. And so when we got the call, when our GM at the time called us into the conference room, the department heads, and was like, hey, I'm going to pull the trigger for nobody to come into the office anymore. You guys are going to have to transition to work from home, is when it really hit me like, oh my gosh, this thing is like really real. Because when you're moving at 100 miles per hour, I guess you don't really pay attention unless it directly impacts you. So it's almost like secondary. And, you know, for us, Hot 97 in particular, it wasn't really a hard transition for us because we already was moving light years ahead in the digital space in terms of where we wanted to take our brand. And I think we understood the impact of digital and how, you know, radio is now secondary and digital is now first. And so, you know, that's kind of how we treated our brand. And it's such a unique brand. It's not your typical radio station brand. It's a really massive brand, and it's like an international brand as well. So the transition from home thing wasn't very hard for us to do. Like, you know, I broadcast my show on my microphone on my laptop and things of that nature. And quarantivity is something that is you work on. For me, I work on in spurts, right? So like I look at this like twofold, where I was going 100 miles per hour and I wasn't living, I wasn't enjoying the quality of life because I was going so fast. So there were a lot of things in my private life that I felt I was missing out on, in terms of like being able to play tennis with my son at a decent hour at night, being able to have dinner every night and what that really means for a family, getting in a good book. I was missing out on so much of living life and quality of life because I was so consumed with everything else, you know, getting to the train, off the train, going into the building, doing this. Oh, I got a meeting, a dinner meeting. Oh, I got this to shoot. Oh, I got that to shoot. And, you know, you have the nannies and you have the helpers, but you're like, you're not as engaged. So now I feel like, although this was such a tragic thing that had happened and so many people lost their lives, it gave me a different perspective to life and what it truly means to live and to be present with your family and to be present with your friends and to put your phone down and to prioritize your life, because we are in an industry where it's overly glamorized and, you know, the money comes in and the popularity comes in, and that can jade what we all view life as. And what this virus has showed a lot of us is that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what you do or how many Birkin bags are in your closet. It doesn't matter. When it hits your door, it hits your door, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so that's what I appreciate from this. So when I call myself quarantivity, it's like there are things that I have been wanting to work on for many years, but I was so busy working on other things or the radio station brand that my brand had become secondary. So finally, I got my podcast off. Finally, I'm on my second book, which I'm 4 chapters in. But I also pace myself now where I come back to it. Like right now, I want to be present in this moment, and I'll get back to quarantivity in this moment.
Yeah.
And being able to find that balance.
Even though there is so much against us,
you will see me choose to protect myself and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
Because it's going to take all of us thinking about one another.
And even with my face covered, you will see me.
You will see me as a mother, a wife, a friend.
As an athlete who gave everything to the game I love.
As a father, leading by example.
As a sister.
An entertainer.
As a champion for my people.
You will see me finding a light in a dark time.
To unlock our creativity and push our craft.
You will see me demanding the space to tell the stories that matter.
As a man who knows that tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Join us in wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us together.
I love it. There's so many things, but first, I need like a cowbell or something for these moments. But you said something that's kind of on the key word, like Jada Pinkett's entanglement. I think we got one for this interview. Is the quarantivity, you know, like that. That is, I love that. You know what I mean? It is a way of being. That would be the definition. Locked up at home or something like that. I love that. You coined that, right? That's you, right?
I'm coining it. Quarantivity.
Yeah, quarantivity. I totally love it. But you know, with what you said, I relate to all of that. And actually, I've been sometimes been feeling kind of remorseful for the comforting aspects that have happened as a result of quarantine. And the things you talked about, family and more time and that kind of thing, I do identify with that. But because of all, all the deaths and all these kind of things, I feel bad because, everything isn't horrible. But I do think that some good has come out of this as well. And Mtume, I want to go back to you. So as a veteran artist who's, been through so many stages of this, how did you feel to see the way that, that people were responding today, the artists were using their music platforms to express how they felt?
Well, first of all, even before I answer that, I want to give a shout out to YoYo. You had mentioned New York Undercover. Her performance, I think it was with Terrence Howard, am I correct? It was incredible, and I enjoyed scoring it, and I didn't get a chance to meet her, so I'm getting a chance like 30-something years later just to tell her what a great performance she did. In terms of the music, I always say this: society is a thermostat. It sets the temperature. Artists are the thermometers. We just reflect it. So what you saw in the streets is the reflection of what's happening. It took me back, I'm a child of the 60s. I came through the Black Power movement. And to see what has galvanized, well, it's been coming, but especially after the assassination, wasn't just killing, it was assassination of George Floyd. What I found interesting was because of hip hop, it galvanized not just Black kids. I saw young white kids. I saw young Asians. I saw young Hispanics. So social movement always comes from, like I said, the thermometer that we set as artists. And that's what time it is, And as an old head, I was just pleased to see it, man. It just warmed my heart.
Yeah.
My only concern is, it's not what you start, it's what you're able to continue. Okay. Don't let this stuff die out after a certain period.
I just want to say, to piggyback off of that, I always feel like hip hop has done more for race relations in this country than anything else.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I say that is because it influenced generations of young kids. And it's hard to be, I always feel like racism is taught in your home, right? It's something that kids are taught, but it's really hard to be a racist when your favorite artist is A Boogie. You know what I mean? So I always feel like when I go to these concerts or when I look at Summer Jam or, I'm in these places and I see all of these melting pots of cultures in one particular place, that makes me, the one thing that I'm proud most about in terms of hip hop is uniting many different people from many different backgrounds.
Yeah. TT, how at the station, how do you feel? You talked about the digital presence being so important, but how has the station taken a part in acknowledging what's going on?
Well, we talk about what's going on every day. We're super vocal. Each personality in their own way is super vocal about everything that's happening. So we're always shedding light on what is happening. And when we had the big pause the music for a day, we took the whole entire playlist for 24 hours and just made it social conscious music. So you heard stuff from Fight the Power to Meek Mill, Other Side of America to Little Baby. And people were like texting me like, what's happening? So it's about creating awareness and also understanding like what the energy you're putting and programming into the universe and what the people listening to the radio station demands and wants. And it's about balance. You had a lot of artists who put records out. You had Trey Songz that put out a phenomenal record called How Many Times. You had Little Baby who put out Bigger Picture. You had Meek Mill who put out Other Side of America. You had so many artists that put music out.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, YoYo, are you?
I'm sorry, YoYo.
Oh, sorry, Snoop did something too. Snoop, forget exactly what it was, but Snoop did something with, what was it, a Jamaican artist, reggae artist, really powerful.
Yeah, he might have, yeah. So you have a lot of artists who put out, socially conscious music and use their voice and their art to deliver a message. And one thing about hip hop that a lot of people tend to forget about is that hip hop has always been the voice of the voiceless, the voice of the people. I mean, whether you like what they're rapping about or not, some artists really do talk about their real life experiences. And if you want that to stop, then you have to change this systemic racism in America that has created these environments that a lot of our people, brown and black people, come from. So when people say, oh, hip hop is this or hip hop is that, well, let's look at these environments and these systems that have been in place for so many years that create this type of oppression in this country. So, you know, you just have to, when you're thinking about music and you're thinking about programming music, for me, I think about it as a piece of artwork, and what kind of energy do you want to be or put out as a programmer? What are the people saying? Are you listening? You know, and because a programmer may not like a record or may not feel a record, that doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. It just means that it may not be for you, but doesn't mean that it's not for the people that are listening to the radio. So you have to just like have a check and balance system in place.
Yeah, I love that. And so Geo, I read this incredible article on you from University of Pittsburgh. I'm not sure when this interview was done, but it said the artists say what they want, and I get the world to come take a listen. But to that point, I wanted to ask you about during this time in the social unrest and artists speaking. I mean, Alicia Keys, you know, for years, I mean, taking the stance with wearing makeup and that kind of thing, that was way before this. But, you know, artists have been expressing themselves the whole time. But for you and your label, what was it like? Like, what was the initial reaction?
Well, we got together with all the artists, and you know, some, you know, were immediately wanted to be involved, and others were, you know, wanted to have some guidance on where they should go or what they should say. But, you know, the company, or the artists really, because the money comes from the artists, you know, they put up $100 million, but the, you know, the company, the black people, there's a board within the company helping to direct the fund. So they put up money, but also I think we had several artists that, you know, did protest songs. We saw a huge resurgence in This Is America. We resurfaced that to radio, as well as a song called Black by Buddy. So, I mean, like TT said, they played that record pretty much, I mean, about 30 times that day. You know, I mean, everybody, you know, went back and adjusted their programming. But, you know, I think we're still trying to keep our artists engaged in this, because like Mtume said, you know, that's just the beginning. We got to keep this going. You know, so it's starting with voting. We have a big voter campaign that all of our artists are trying to get involved in, because we think that's the beginning of getting everyone's voice back, and at least getting a better voice than we've had, you know, with this current administration.
Yeah, that's incredible. And YoYo, when I see in the position that artists take, it makes me think about your career. And I remember earlier in your career when you know, the Rodney King unrest happened. And I remember, if I'm correct, like seeing artists like yourself in LA that were doing reporting for maybe BET and MTV, like on camera, like in the streets, describing what was happening. And I thought that was a great way for the artists to be involved and to communicate with, you know, to communicate with the artists.
You know, I'm always excited to see artists step up, but more so than this time for me, seeing artists step up, because normally the artist is the filler in, saying things that other people don't want to say. We are normally, the news will bring us in, or, you know, we would commentate on things that they didn't really want to speak about because they had to be, non-judgmental, or stay, you know, at a, you know, not judge either side. This time, seeing reporters, seeing the directors who play the music, the heads, talk about their uneasiness, their unjustment, you know, it felt really good to me, because it, you know, the artists, I feel like sometimes the artists, we bite, we fight, we stand up, we speak out loud, we protest, but to hear those in position speak about it, to talk about, you know, being Black in America, you know, telling their stories, how, you know, hey, listen, it's not just this young kid over here who looks like a thug or listen to you know, hardcore gangster rap music. You know, this is not just his story. Listen, I get pulled over and here I am. So it was good for me to hear everyone, I mean, especially Black men who have been successful in life, tell their story out loud. For me, that was the best. I mean, listening to Black men really speak out who are successful and have platforms was really very, very heartwarming and very needed. And so I was very excited to see that. I'm used to seeing the artists, but to see people behind the music stand up was really a bonus for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Mtume, how would you say the way that artists today have responded is different from other times?
That's an excellent question. And I would just like to, first of all, take us back. I mean, this didn't start, you know, this year. I mean, my parents, you know, I'm 73. So my parents were of the civil rights generation. And I call that the generation of social disobedience, you know, sit-ins, boycotts, and stuff like. And there were songs that came out back there in the 60s. You had Nina Simone, Young, Gifted, and Black. You had Curtis Mayfield, Keep On Pushing. Those were the songs that related to that. Move a little forward to the 60s, you got James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And I'm talking about, I'm coming through when there were tanks and machine guns in the street. The armies were in the streets. I mean, what we see now, that like the incident that happened, what was out in Washington with Trump sent the troops. But I'm talking about here in Newark, you had tanks driving down the streets. So, you know, the idea of the protest, what makes this so great, your generation is a generation of social information. Something happens, you get it in real time. And, but this has been, you know, the struggle of our people, you know, forever. And I'm ecstatic to see it. But, you know, this has been the case for a while. And it's just now coming to the forefront. And again, goes back to what everyone on the panel is saying. It's this social awareness that now seems to have risen to a level where other ethnic groups are beginning to accept, you know, the realities of what we've been dealing with forever.
Right.
It's always been happening.
Yeah, that's definitely had a profound impact on me because, like YoYo said, watching the news and seeing all these things happen and seeing people call it out for being wrong, I just feel like I'm not used to that. You know, I'm not used to seeing so many people, you know, come and support us and be so vocal about it. So I think it's great. So also, YoYo, what about you? Like, how do you feel like things are different with the way the artists respond today and before?
You know, I love it. I just like Mtume said, I just want them to keep going, to continue the journey. So yeah, it's good now, and you know, just don't jump on the hype. You know, a lot of people got out there, you know, a lot of people doing it just because. I just want it to continue. I mean, we've always been doing it, like you said, since I've known it. But to see everyone from every generation say, oh my God, to hear my dad crying to me saying, this is not right. You know, he wants to do, you know, say something out loud. He wants to get on my, you know, he's a Vietnam vet. He wanted to get on my social media and talk and say something.
YoYo, you got Mamma Mia on there. You got to get him on there.
I know, right? He wants to, he has a respiratory problem. So he has literally been in since March 12th. And has come out since.
Oh, okay. We'll be praying. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But the crying, I've never seen my dad cry to me, you know, and just so uneasy. I mean, you know, talking to him on the phone and hearing him cry, just like he just, you know, we fought for this country. This country is ours, you know, he want, you know, just to hear that. And I never had seen that, not even in the Rodney King situation, you know, but to see my dad cry out loud was, you know, was just, I wanted to see that. I want to see us all mad. I want to see my father upset, not crying, but you know, that's what I think it's going to take. So I was happy to see not just the artists, because like I said, you know, the people I flock around, I mean, you know, we live for a fight. So, but to see, you know, to hear my dad say out loud, you know, he's just tired and he wants to speak out loud is what it's going to take, you know?
Yes, definitely. And TT, so when you guys talked about 24 hours of socially conscious music from all the different decades. That just sounds phenomenal. So Mtume just lists so many different songs, and you listed some contemporary songs. Like what would you say was the difference, when listening to all these different songs back to back?
I don't know if I can say particularly what the difference was, because I feel like each artist have a right to express their art how they want to express it. That's why they're artists. So however they choose to express their art in their own unique way is their God-given right, in my opinion. And that's part of why, artists are artists. For me, I don't really look to artists per se to be the person that speaks for me. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
Or like, I think sometimes we put so much pressure on artists that we negate the individual work that we need to do ourselves and as a community. And we are super fixated with this celebrityism. And that's why we have a reality show guy as a president. So I think the real work comes in with you, the people in your community, us. Yes, celebrities have platforms and they have voices and they have a responsibility to some degree, but I never looked for an entertainer or a rap artist to change my situation. That takes individual work. And so like, I kind of am like, if this artist chooses to express themselves through the rapping or painting or whatever, and it may look different than what it did in the 90s or, in the 80s or, before, then they have the right to do that. So that's kind of how I just view it from a different type of lens.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So in addition to all this going on, I mean, the world still turns. People still want to have a good time, party. There's two recent happenings, Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's WAP video, right? Made headlines. People are talking about it. And this has happened also while Kamala Harris has made history, as the first woman of color on the major platform as vice president candidate. This has been an incredible year for women in hip hop. With the success of the WAP video, there's been a lot of backlash because of the lyrical content and for the video. How do you guys feel if women are held to a different standard?
I guess you have to ask yourself, like, what are you looking for Cardi B and Megan to do for you personally? I mean, for me, the reason why I never had an issue with the song or the video, because this is not the first time that somebody put out an explicit sexually enhanced song. I mean, you had Akinelli, which was on the radio, and he's talking about put it in your mouth. Yeah. You had Kaya, My Neck, My Back. You've had Slob on My Arm. I think that was 3-6 Mafia that put out that record. Yeah. And Little Kim was absolutely the blueprint to embracing your sexuality and not giving a fuck, or excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but not giving a care in the world what people thought about her embracing her sexuality and putting it out to the universe. What she did had is still influenced in the female rap game generations now. That when you watch the WAP video, the opening statue is the Little Kim hardcore pose. Right. Men fantasized about Little Kim and wanting to be with Little Kim, so Trina had explicit lyrics on the radio. I mean, we can go on and on in days. Men have explicit lyrics on records and videos the entire time. So when Cardi B and Megan drops a record, these are two women who have never shied away from their sexuality. So if this is the art that they want to create, I don't see a problem with it. if you don't like it, that's fine. That's your choice, your preference. Don't stream it, don't buy it. Why do we say they shouldn't do that when we allow other people to create art how they want to create it? And when you look at other genre of music, sex, rock and roll, and all the things that go on in their lyrics, we're not saying that those rock artists should be stifled in their creativity. So am I looking for Megan or Cardi B to put out a Beyonce Black is King album? No. Monday they may wake up and want to do something on that level and want to have their creativity shift towards that way, but as artists, you have to give them their room to want to grow into that, you know. And so I mean, I personally don't understand the backlash, and I get this question asked to me a lot, and I just feel like artists are allowed to express themselves however they want to express themselves, and whatever repercussions or consequences that come with that, you have to eat that as an artist. You know what I mean?
No,
and so
I'm gonna chime in if I can.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I feel the same way, especially being a woman artist. To me, you know, I get it. And it's always like a catch-22 with me because I work so heavy in the community. It's like a catch-22. And believe me, I said, when they know better, they'll do better. But the kids are watching. And so, you know, and we really don't grasp that. So when we say Black Lives Matter, when we talk about community, when we talk about it, these things we do have to take in consideration because we've been like the muscle of the community, the Rocky Balboas of our community. You know, and it takes that type of person, not saying that that's their fight or something that they want to do. So I can't wait for the genre to open itself up, for men to stop writing so much of the women's lyrics talking about wet pee.
But can I ask you a question, YoYo? So although she raps about, let's look at Cardi B for an example, right? Here's the paradigm. Although she raps about these things, she's also very, very vocal about political issues and oppression in Black and brown communities and injustice that happen to Black men on a daily basis. So do we dismiss, so my question is, do we dismiss that part of her because people are so hyper focused on the music and what she puts out? Like
no, I don't think you dismiss her at all because I love her, to be quite honest. She is a true artist. I love that how she, you know, I love who she is. When I'm speaking community. I'm speaking that it needs to be wider. When we were out, you had different looks, you had different hairstyles, you had different women saying different things. It just wasn't sex. So I think that's why the hype is such. And I'm the same way. When people ask me about the sex part, about the women, I do the same thing. I said, well, men can say it and own basketball teams.
But can I ask you a question? Can you still be for your community and have sexual content? That's what, I guess that's what my question is, because she is very vocal about fighting for her community, although she puts out sexual content. Can she be both?
But absolutely she can. You know,
I just want to hear YoYo's perspective because she's, you know, she's the OG in the game and she's another female rapper and she does a lot of community work. So I love to have these conversations with like women like you because it just helps me to understand from a different perspective.
It's a catch-22, and it's always been that way. When I wanted to run for office, I would regret some of the lyrics I made. I mean, that's why I said when they know better, they'll do better. That's why I love community of women, because women will help you grow. They'll help you get out of this box and help you see the community for what they'll see, you know, and it's easy to do it, and they'll grow out of it. I don't think that Cardi's going to, you know, Cardi can't do a WAP 10 years from now. Nobody's going to even want to look at that WAP. So, so I think they'll grow and they'll learn from it. And it's a catch-22. Women have it harder. It's harder for us to feel empowered by talking about sexuality or talking about sex in music. I look at it as the more you know, the more you grow. Working in the community and every young girl coming up to me saying, yo, I spit, and then talking about her tits, her cat, and her back is kind of whack to me. I'm just ready for the industry to open up a little more.
Well, YoYo, I know you have a story about one of the turning points for you was like going to talk to a group of kids and having them recite some of your lyrics. Can you tell that story?
Right. Well, they used to ask me, journalists ask me all the time, do you feel you're a role model? I used to follow behind Public Enemy and Ice Cube and watch them do their interviews. And I say, no, it's not up to me to raise your kid. They have to raise themselves. And I mean, I went on saying that for so long, living this pretentious life, trying to be, like, I don't it's not my responsibility, it's your responsibility as a parent. And I had no idea how big music was. A little girl came up to me and started rapping some lyrics. And I said, oh no, you can't say that. And a little 4-year-old girl, and it wasn't until then that it hit me. And it doesn't hit everybody. I mean, the change doesn't come for everybody, but it came for me. And at that very moment, I went on to make the album Black Pearl. And trying to fit back into an industry where I'm the type of girl that's down for my nigga, I ride for I peel a cap, that girl into trying to say, oh wait, I want to speak power. If music is this powerful, if we can't impact and do, and that's a catch, because how can you do all of that? And that's been a part of my prayer, but it changed me. And I just think that's just for me, but I'm all for empowering, WAP it out.
So Geo, that song, it's not on our RCA song, but yeah, what is your reaction to these moments of the backlash? Like, how do you feel about that artistically?
It's really up to the artist. I've promoted and put so many male songs on the radio with similar content, and nobody said a word to me. So now a female says something from a female perspective. I mean, I don't have any trouble with it. I mean, it's up to her what she wants to say. My job is to get it played. I'm not the gatekeeper. There are other gatekeepers who will push back. And if they do, I just communicate that to them. But I think males have been doing it for years. I mean, you look at, Luke, a person that had probably one of the most explicit songs in the world, but now is also one of the biggest community people, in Miami right now. I mean, even Juicy probably was a little bit controversial in the 80s. I mean, there were a lot of songs, like the Ohio Players covers were, like, my mom used to see those in my room and wonder what I was doing, so I think, people, they have the right. Social media has changed things. People are a little less sensitive to, sexual things now. And, I think women expressing themselves the way they want to is fine, because men have done that for years. Radio hasn't pushed back on them. So I don't feel that they should push back on women either.
Yeah, I do think, because literally almost 100% of the male rap songs, are misogynistic.
Yeah,
that is just the case, and we've come to accept it.
When you hear the dirty version of the song, then you're like, oh my God, this is what they're really saying. But no one says a word when it's a male song. Yeah, but I would say in general, I would love to see a balance, in terms of what is getting the mass exposure to. And then, like you mentioned, This Is America, like to see how well that song did, a political song of that stature in this day and age. I know he was already a huge artist, but that was great to see a song like that get that type of attention. So I'm definitely all for balance. But I also will say that, at least with Cardi B, she is using her platform. She interviewed Joe Biden. She interviewed Bernie Sanders, and talks about politics a lot. So at least it's a balance. And then also, we all are multi-dimensional people. Like no one is just one thing. So I think that's fine. YoYo, did I hear you?
Yeah, no, I think what both were saying is a fair, that's why I said it's always like a catch-22. This is just the 30-year-old YoYo in the industry speaking. But if I had to go to bat for women and talk about, a fair exchange, I would probably do the same thing. I mean, I'm not saying don't play it. I'm just saying, like, I think, there needs to be a broader spectrum. When Lauryn Hill came and changed the game, we were also in love with that, because so many people wanted to find that happy medium. And for me, I'm just saying, with no disrespect to the young, fearless women who are shutting it down and making big moves, with no disrespect to them, I just said, just more You know, because sex sells. I mean, you know, sex sells, and women, we have to remember, we are mothers of the earth. You know, the kids are watching. We are in some dire need times. And I just think, you know, to have a voice, and Cardi B is doing it, means a lot.
Yeah, and I as a parent, I have a 17-year-old daughter and son, and you know, I would not feel comfortable playing WAP, you know, with my kids, explicit version, and even at this age that they are. I mean, you know how I am in general, but even some of the male songs too that are just anything that's sexually explicit. You know, I mean, I know you had to talk about these issues, but for me, that's not, you know, the way. So I definitely understand all the perspectives being shared. And in Mtume, like Juicy, you know, you were setting it off, man.
Leave me alone. Go ahead.
you're setting off. I think I mentioned before we started, like when I was back in school, man, that was one of the songs that it came on, and the teachers had to go on the dance floor at the dances and break the people up from doing freak. To do.
Yeah, it's so funny. I so enjoyed listening to the sisters because to me, the female point of view is much more impactful to me. I know how men think. It's more important to understand how sisters feel. Well, to go back to Juicy, I remember I did a podcast with Questlove, and he was telling me how his parents disallowed him from even being able to play it in the house. Well, I'll give you a backdrop. At that time, we were actually sued by Wrigley Gum. Epic Records refused to put the record out. I had to fight for them to release it. Now, Risque is based on what time you're talking about. Right now, that ain't nothing. I mean, that lyric is nothing to some of the stuff I hear today. But back then, to say you can lick me everywhere, it was like, like the whole world went nuts, you know. But they weren't going to release it. I had to fight to get it released. And because I told them at the record company, I said, none of y'all buy records. People buy records. So they finally relented, and they released the record. They didn't release the record for regular airplay. They only put it on Quiet Storm. And after 1 week, I'll never forget this. They called me to the CBS building, and they had me on the call with all the black program directors. And they were saying the one thing that was so ironic about that song, he said, from the first beat, people knew the song from the beat before a lyric or a chord was played. And that's how it got its identity. But that lyric caused quite a, I mean, like, that's why I'm laughing, listening to, wow, that's, each generation takes it to the next step. But that lyric in Juicy, it was banned in a lot of households, black households. Mm-hmm. But, you know, reality is reality, it'll come through.
What does that have to say about, especially with the label being hesitant to put it out? It was put out, it did so well, you know, as we mentioned earlier, 37 years later, it's been sampled by so many artists. And so what does that say, you know, about the music and your artist, artistic direction? Yeah.
Again, I'm coming from a completely different era. We didn't have that much black control. You know, you had people over the black music department, but they were really just puppets for the white boys. So it's like we went against the grain. And to me, I never wrote music, you know, for any reason other than if my people loved it. I didn't care about crossing over. I said a lot of people crossed over and couldn't get black. You know what I mean? I wrote for black people. And if white people liked it, great. But I didn't write for them. And I never made an excuse for that. I said, Bruce Springsteen doesn't write for black people. The Rolling Stones don't write for black. But if black people come along, fine. And so back then that was kind of radical. I said, no, my music comes from black people. My background is jazz. For 5 years, I stood next to Miles Davis. Do you understand?
Yes.
You really understand. Miles Davis. And he instilled in me the understanding you commit to what you play. And whoever likes it, likes it. If they don't, then they don't. And that's how I've approached it. So black people embraced Juicy, and a lot of white people who never said it, but you know, they embraced it. Yeah. And I was just happy about that. I didn't care about, I never wrote music for awards. I wrote music for rewards, the reward of if your people respect what you're doing.
Right. I wanted to ask you, one of the foundation members, Tony Winger, worked with you at Epic back in the day. And so he remembers having a conversation with you about this conversation of crossover. And he said what you said to him was really profound. And, it was something, it was a sentiment about like, why does anyone need to, why is it considered a negative thing not to cross over? And can you describe that?
Oh, yes, sir. Well, you have to understand, back then, I always felt, it was a great book written by Nelson George called The Death of Rhythm and Blues. Remember, I'm talking to y'all like y'all in color. When I came into music, it was black and white. You know what I mean? We didn't have videos. If you didn't hear the record on the radio, it wasn't on. Now, you see what the record was about. You see the visual interpretation. So they were putting this on black artists. Everything had to cross over. And I say cross over from what to what, you know? But white people didn't have to cross over to us. So I think a lot of our music got watered down. And when the video came, I would see a lot of the black videos would have more white people in it than they had black people. I remember when we first did the video for You, Me, and He, which was a single that we had. And I remember I specifically requested a black production company. Unbeknownst to me, we walk into the set for the first club scene. They were like 85% white people in there and 15% black. I stopped the shoot. And they said, oh, it's gonna cost. I said, I'll pay for it. I said, we'll come back tomorrow. I want it reversed. Back then, artists weren't doing that. They were just trying to get that. I said, that has to come naturally, man. You write for who you write for, man. And maybe, I don't know what it was that your friend quoted about what I said, but I wasn't about that. I said, if we pack in a stadium or we pack in a club, where the white people gonna sit anyway? You know, selling out is selling out. They never put that onus on white artists. You gotta reach a black artist.
Right. Well, it is interesting. Well, I mean, when you go back and you look at but it was different, right? So back in the day, when you took an Elvis or some, artists who took a black artist song, it made it popular, but they weren't trying to reach the black audience. They were, capitalizing on that creativity
look
for
at
the white
like
audience.
Pat Boone.
Yeah.
Every hit that Little Richard did.
Right.
Only difference was we couldn't get on, back then, we couldn't get on white stations, pop stations. So you had a white artist who would copy the black hit of Little Richard and sell it to white people. Yeah. He'd sell 4 million, Richard sell 200,000.
But we did have an instance a few years ago where a lot of like at the American Music Awards, a lot of white artists who sang R&B songs were winning the awards. So where there was Ariana Grande and Robin Thicke, things like that. And Justin Timberlake is someone who's done well. And I feel like they have, with the producers that they've used, et cetera, they have targeted the black audience.
Look, I'm gonna say this.
Justin Bieber's whole last album was an R&B album. Let's get that clear.
Right, I just want to say this for our panel. I've always been of the persuasion, the real goal of the industry was to control black music without having to deal with black people. Okay? And by that, I mean, like you and the sister reference, it was like getting white artists to do R&B. You can't name me 5 black male R&B singers right now that are on, but you can name me 5 white singers, and I'm not against, anybody can sing anybody's music, but you can't name me 5 black rock bands, can you? Because they won't sign black rock.
Right.
It's not that it doesn't exist. I'm just saying, if you're gonna do that, make it a 2-way street. They have dominated black music. It's hard to find, besides like Rihanna or Queen Bee. How many? You're talking about 3 or 4 artists, but they have 1 million young white artists or Latino artists doing your music. I'm not against that, but where are we represented in quote unquote their kingdom?
Right.
After Jimi Hendrix, name me another black guitar player. After Living Color, name me another black rock band. That's where it's unfair. You want R&B, but not for me. I mean, black people.
Yeah. Wow. Very powerful. We appreciate your perspective. Again, it's an honor to have you here today. And thank you guys. I really love the way this conversation has been going and all you guys just being so open for the conversation. TT, I have another question for you. Considering the shifting media landscape, new platforms and streaming, you know, where do you see radio and the ecosystem for an artist's career? You were talking about the radio station in general. You guys pay a lot of attention to what's happening digitally and how you use that. Yeah. So what do you see? What do you see as a future?
Radio really has to figure out how they're going to reinvent. I often look at radio as secondary and look at the digital platforms that radio does offer as top tier, because I think that's where the future is. I think it's important for radio stations to also build inside of Apple Music and Spotify and build their playlisting in there. And that's something like, you know, we're focused on at Hot, is how do we get our playlisting up in those areas where we're actually programming not just a regular radio station playlist, but also we're in the Spotify's and we're in the Apple Music, and people's pulling up Hot 97's playlist, and it can compete one day with the Rap Caviars and you know, the Rap Life and all of these different playlists that are really helping artists in the streaming world. So I think, you know, I think as long as radio, you know, radio is free, it'll always be there, but it has to be what's next. You know, what is that next big thing? How are you going to reinvent this? How are you going to expand this? And I think that, you know, digital is where you have to go, like your YouTube channels. Like, what does your radio station YouTube channels look like? What does your radio station content looks like? Content is king. If you're not in that space, if you're not delivering top tier content, you're going to fall by the wayside. These kids nowadays, they're on YouTube like crazy. They don't even watch regular TV. They're on YouTube.
Right.
And so, like, are you living in that space? Like, when you think of like the biggest hip hop morning show, you know, when you think about the Breakfast Club, and when you think about Ebro in the Morning, and you think about Funk Flex Freestyles, like, they're garnering millions and millions of hits and subscriptions, and subs are like crazy. So, like, how are these radio stations building in this area in the YouTube space and all of these outlets that are out there? Because you're going to have to compete. And what I noticed is that the pandemic kind of sped it up, and radio is really taking a hit in the advertising world across the board. So, like, what are you selling in those spaces? What are those apps that you're creating and developing? Like, you have to really be an innovative thinker. You have to think outside of the box. And when I talk to different on-air personalities all the time, and they ask for advice, and I'm like, you know, you have to look at your brand like a competitive brand. How are you competing? How is your brand, whether you do mornings in Wichita, Texas, or whether you, wherever you do your radio show at, how are you competing? How are you building that brand? How are you living in that space? And you have to treat your brand like a top tier brand and build it. And I think it's very important for radio to think outside the box. And trust me, I've been in radio pretty much my whole career. I don't think I had many other jobs other than radio. I mean, of course I had like part-time jobs, you know, getting in, but this is all I know. And I look at radio now like this is going to be a dinosaur one day in terms of like traditional radio. And how are you thinking 10 years, 5 years? And with the pandemic, it sped it up. Like, how are you thinking long term?
There is a quote that says, a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And that's what it was for me. After 14 years of solid employment, I got laid off twice within a year. Applying for jobs and not hearing back, I felt defeated. I felt like a failure, but then I found hope. I found an online program and got a certification in something totally new, something I never thought I would be able to do. I stepped out of my comfort zone, and I'm now a consultant in the tech space. So if you're unemployed right now, I've been there, but you gotta keep going. There is still hope. You will find something new.
Yeah, definitely. So Geo, with at the label side, you've seen a shift, right? From you predate digital. So you've seen this come, and it's, definitely more of a priority. There are not as many huge digital platforms as there are radio stations across the nation, but how's that looking? How's that looking at the record company in terms of how much of a priority digital is with streaming and everything, alongside what the commitments are to radio?
Well, streaming is number one. I mean, it starts there. Well, we get the information and data from streaming in order to get records on the radio now. Like, we prefer that the artist put the album out, just let their audience with it, and then we choose the song based on streaming the most, what have the catch rate, meaning people are putting it in their collection and keeping it. So there's a lot of data that we use. I mean, yeah, you use your ears and your gut and you feel, but you combine that with the data. I agree with TT. Like, radio is in a tough spot because as the cars go, it's going to be very tough for radio. And this generation, like the 19-year-old, they didn't grow up. I mean, they grew up on apps. So they're so used to getting in the car and putting on their playlist, they don't even think about the radio. So unless radio reinvents itself and gets an app and allows you to carry it on your phone, then it's going to be tough for you out there.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. I think we covered a great ground for Music Day, a verified hit brought to you by Living Legends Foundation, Inc. I appreciate all the panelists. I think you guys had incredible insight in terms of what we've been seeing with COVID, explicit lyrics and music, and just the state of the music industry today. Is there any closing thoughts from anyone about any of the things we discussed today?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me to be here, especially with everybody on the Zoom. The triple OGs on here. Geo, what's up? Hey, YoYo, what's going on? Tell Ice Cube I said what's up. I don't know who reactivated Ice Cube, but I'm living for his Instagram.
And he is really doing it. Yeah, I just love being in a conversation about music, about today's current events, and to have different perspectives and hear different perspectives. So, it's like having an inside scoop. So I'm glad to be a part of it, hearing, everybody's perspective on everything.
Well,
okay, awesome.
My closing would be, music is life. And in life, you either adjust to change or you change by change. And just like radio, music will also have to adjust. We're in a new world. It requires a new view and a new lens.
That's awesome. Geo?
I think as technology changes, you'll see the way people consume music change. And I don't know what's next. Streaming blew me away. I thought the CD was the last configuration. But I mean, look, I love streaming because it does allow you to access everything. And kids can immediately get updated on Mtume's music to anybody's music, and it's right in their hand before you had to go to somebody's CD collection. So I think it's more accessible. The business is going to grow. It's just going to change as technology changes, and which is good, So that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, beautiful. Lastly, how can people keep up with you? Can y'all, share your social media or websites or whatever you would have?
Mine is very simple. James Mtume Live. That'll be Instagram and Facebook. Mtume is spelled M-T-U-M-E.
Thank you. YoYo.
You can follow me on all streaming platforms. Download my new single, Out of Control. And you can, on my social media is YoYo Fearless. And you can listen to me on Cafe Mocha Radio.
Awesome. TTT. Yeah.
Mine is TT Torrez, 3 T's ORREZ. You guys can follow me on social media, all of it, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Facebook, yes. I'm not as active on Facebook, but I should be a little bit more active on it. TikTok, I just got a little TikTok page. And of course, you can watch on YouTube, TT Torrez on YouTube, and the I Still Love Her podcast, which is on YouTube as well. You can watch the video on YouTube and the audio on Spotify and Apple Music. So you guys can check that out.
Okay. Well, thank you. I hope all the listeners really enjoyed this conversation. My name is Billy Johnson Jr. It's been a pleasure being your host. All right. Thank you. You guys have a great day.
What about Geo? He don't have an Instagram?
Did I cut you off, Geo?
Geo Bivins. I'm only on Instagram. GeoBivins. I'm just on Instagram. Thank you.
Hey, sorry, Geo. You know that wasn't on purpose.
No, I know. I don't post much anyway.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Living Legends Foundation. Yeah,
pleasure to meet.
Yeah, thank you.
Music Day, a verified hit, is presented by the Living Legends Foundation, Inc. Real talk with experience. Please follow and share Music Day on Instagram at Living Legends Foundation and at Music Day Podcast, on Twitter at the LLF Inc. Join us on Facebook, The Living Legends Foundation. Executive producers are Jacqueline Reinhardt, Mark Hill, Ken Johnson, and Pat Shields. Our associate producers are Shannon Henderson, Sheila Eldridge, Tony Winger, Vivian Scott Chu, and Varnell Johnson. Production by Mark Hill Creative. Talent booking Black.LLC. Theme music by Wendell Wellman for Star Maker Global. Interstitial music by William Reinhardt. And I'm your announcer, Jay Johnson.